Welcome to our historical and cultural tour of the Black Forest. Nestled under the shadow of Pikes Peak, northeast of Colorado Springs, the Black Forest is a coveted place for homes in a rural, natural setting of pine forests, fresh air, and clear skies. Whether you are a resident of Black Forest or not, I know you will find the pictures and stories in this program to be interesting and educational. So settle back and enjoy your trip through the Black Forest. The Black Forest is a 100 square mile patch of Ponderosa pines and grassy meadows that straddles the Palmer Divide. The Palmer Divide is a ridge of land extending eastward from the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains north of Colorado Springs, winding southeast and then northeast for about 30 miles until it blends into the eastern plains of Colorado. The name Palmer Divide came about because William Jackson Palmer was the founder of Colorado Springs, and because it divides the drainage to the north into the Platte River and to the south into the Arkansas River. Topping out at 7,700 feet above sea level and rising 1,700 feet above Colorado Springs, this ridge is a major factor in the weather patterns of the area. As warm, moist air from the Pacific Ocean comes up from the south, the rising terrain of the Black Forest causes the air mass to cool and drop its moisture as rain or snow. This increased moisture, along with the sun, soil, and growing season, is the right mixture for Ponderosa pines, and the result is a beautiful park-like area rich in trees, grass, and wildlife. The Ponderosa pines reach as tall as 75 feet and can measure 2 feet in diameter. Old-timers tell of old-growth ponderosas that were 4 feet in diameter. Trees of that size were over 100 feet tall. Another common plant is the low-growing kinnikinick that covers the ground and produces little red berries. This hardy plant is green year-round and withstands the cold winters with amazing stamina. It has fire-resistant properties and is valuable for holding the soil to prevent erosion. Deer and bears love the berries. While no Indian tribes lived in the Black Forest, several tribes, including the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute Indians, came through the area on hunting trips. General Palmer was the first major landowner when he established the Colorado Pinery Trust in 1870 and purchased 43,000 acres of timber and meadows. The Pineries, as it was called, provided railroad ties for the railroad he was building and mining timbers for the silver and gold mines in the mountains. An 1880 article from the Colorado Springs Weekly Gazette stated, "For years, nearly every foot of lumber used in Denver was hauled from the divide." The article goes on to say gradually the timber supply melted away before the sawmills, until nearly every tract of any size had been denuded of its large trees. 16 sawmills were in operation at one time during the height of the logging operations. The timber was logged off in the late 1800s and early 1900s, with the last major logging just after World War I, so the forest has had about 90 years to recover to where it is now. More pine trees exist now than ever before, even though they are not as large as the old growth that was logged off. The Black Forest is a home to an assortment of mule deer, birds, rabbits, fox, raccoons, squirrels, and porcupines. Occasionally, a black bear wanders around foraging for berries and usually finds bird feeders to be a great place for an easy meal. More rarely, a mountain lion passes through the forest, but sighting such an animal is rare. 2 elk herds live in the forest and move from meadow to meadow. The Abert squirrel, or tufted ear squirrel, is one animal that is unique. This variety of squirrel is black and has pointed ears with tufts of hair at the top. A sign placed by the Boy Scouts in 1980 says, "The black tuft-eared squirrel you see in the Black Forest is a member of the Abert squirrel family." Although the Abert ranges throughout the Southwest, a black coat is considered rare. However, the black form is common in the Black Forest, where 65% of all Aberts are black. Its primary source of nutrition is the bark buds, pollen, and the flower of the Ponderosa pine. The weather on the Palmer Divide fits the saying, "If you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes and it will change." A day in the Black Forest can have snow, hail, sun, and thunder all at the same time. While severe weather is rare, Black Forest residents see 2 or 3 major blizzards every winter, and the snowfall averages 90 inches per year, more than twice that of the city below. The snow often falls straight down and coats the trees with a blanket of snow or frost, like a winter wonderland. Jack Frost makes occasional visits and covers trees and needles with a sparkling, icy coating. Precipitation totals 20 inches per year, and the relative humidity is often in the single digits in the summer. Muggy is not a word in the Black Forest vocabulary. Summer brings afternoon thunder showers, providing yet another spectacle of God's creative power. Lightning along with the showers is a common occurrence, and the hailstones sometimes fall. Frosts in late May and early September bracket the very short growing season. The sunset across the Front Range are a sight to behold. Brilliant colors of red, orange, and purple make the sky seem ablaze behind the Front Range. The changing patterns of cloud shapes and colors are hypnotizing and provide a never-ending source of wonder. The Black Forest is also rich in history. The first permanent residents were the farmers, ranchers, and lumbermen who raised cattle, potatoes, and wheat, and harvested the timber in the forest. Later residents came because land was cheaper than in the city of Colorado Springs. As time went by, the Interstate Highway and the Air Force Academy were built, and the beauty and peacefulness of the forest became strong forces to attract people to make their homes here. Today, the Black Forest has around 3,000 homes. We would like to share the rich background of this area and help you to more deeply appreciate the past that has shaped it. The tour begins at the intersection of Black Forest Road and Shoup Road, so let's get started. The Black Forest Road and Shoup Road intersection is the center and the cornerstone of Black Forest. A sign was placed at this intersection by the Black Forest Men's Civic Association in 1962 that gives a flavor to the area. The sign is weathered and hard to read, so I'll read it for you. Black Forest, Colorado, elevation 7,500 feet. The Black Forest community extends 12 miles east and west and 9 miles north and south from this point, and involves 192,000 acres of Ponderosa pines. From 1859 to 1875, 16 logging mills furnished ties for the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad and the Kansas and Pacific Railroad. The first settlers were Ute Indians. It was named the Black Forest by early pioneers who noted the dark color from a distance. While the Black Forest is not an incorporated town, it is well known by that name. The name was informal for many years, but it became more official with the opening of the Black Forest Elementary School. First of all, we will tour the sites of the original businesses and buildings at this intersection. Black Forest Road originally was Templeton Gap Road, named after the beginning of the road in Colorado Springs, where Austin Bluffs Parkway crosses Union Boulevard and passes through a gap in the rock formations. Shoup Road was named for Governor Oliver Shoup, president of Tejon Investment Company, vice president of the Edgar Lumber and Box Company, one of the largest sawmills in the forest, and Republican governor of Colorado from 1919 to 1923. Just to the west of the intersection is the Log School. Families living in the center of Black Forest came together to build a one-room school within walking distance of their homes. The school opened in 1922 for grades 1 through 8 and was used for social events as well as church. Mrs. Edith Wolford began teaching here in 1936 and continued to be the one and only teacher until the school was closed in 1945. El Paso County bought the school in 1947, converted it into a home, and brought in electricity. For the next 30 years, the building was occupied by the families of the county maintenance men who took care of the roads in the Black Forest. In 1993, a group of citizens worked together to place the building on the National Register of Historic Places in order to save the school. Restoration of the building and foundation lasted 5 years, and today the building is open for visitors on Thursdays during the summer. Other events are scheduled as requested. To the west of the log school is the Inn in Black Forest. This building has been a popular eating spot for foresters. The name and management changed several times through the years. Originally, the building was a home, built in 1947 by Billy Bant and his wife, the former Gail Burgess. To the east of the log school is the old fire station. The first firefighting equipment was an old truck with a tank mounted on the bed. During the 1950s, Jack and Joyce Greer spearheaded the development of the Fire and Rescue Department and started a ladies' auxiliary. From that humble beginning, the Black Forest Fire Department has grown into a first-class organization that is respected around the entire region. The fire department moved in 2003 to a new station at Burgess Road and Teachout Road. The High Altitude Gardening Club landscapes the grounds at this new station. And they have a new auxiliary station at Hodgen Road and Black Forest Road. To the north of the old fire station, facing Black Forest Road, is the Community Hall. Back in the 1920s, the needs of the community soon outgrew the log school building, so the Black Forest Community Club was officially organized in 1929, and the residents pooled their resources to build a hall. The Burgess family donated the land, and a number of families donated logs and labor to build the building. This hall has been the site of many functions through the years: dances, plays, 4th of July picnics, roller skating, movies for youth, and meetings for local organizations. Still today, it plays a vital role in the community and hosts the Black Forest Festival every August. Many family reunions and wedding receptions are hosted in this rustic but beautiful building. On the southeast corner of Black Forest Road and Shoup Road, between the two newer buildings, is the original Black Forest Community Church Log Sanctuary. The church had its start in the log school in 1932 under the direction of the American Sunday School Union. A formal church was organized in 1936 with the goal of raising money for a new building. The Collins and Morrell families donated this corner of land that was taken from their Fox farm. The basement was finished during the winter of 1939, and the rest of the building was completed in 1940. One of the early members donated the railroad bell that hangs in the bell tower. During the cold winter months, a church member would light the coal or wood furnace on Saturday night and come back to church once or twice before Sunday services the next morning to stoke the fire and keep it blazing. The church was officially dedicated on October 4th, 1942, and Reverend Joseph McKittrick served as the first full-time minister. The new additions were added to the church as the congregation grew. The building that angles across the southwest corner of Shoup Road and Black Forest Road was built in the late 1920s by the Thompson family, who owned 80 acres at that corner. Earlier, the store had operated from a tent and sold gasoline and kerosene from 50-gallon drums. The building has been used for excavating business, and around 2000 the general store moved just to the west into what was once a Gamble's variety store. The Rock and Bee feed store at the top of the hill was home to a long list of renters. Mr. and Mrs. Uter sold groceries and fresh bread while living here in the early 1920s. Several families stayed here while building a home elsewhere in the forest. The building just east of Rock and Bee was first used as a garage, then a real estate office, and even a craft shop. Lucy's Cafe operated here for a while, a barbershop later, and it may have even been a home for a while. The two cabins west of the Black Forest store have housed a long list of business ventures. This blue A-frame home south of the Lutheran Church was once part of a fox farm. Fox pelts of many colors and types came from these farms and were made into exquisite stoles and coats worn by the finest ladies of the day. Fox farms in the Black Forest specialize in exotic black and silver pelts, and also developed platinum and silver varieties. In 1947, the United States government signed a treaty with Russia that allowed American steel companies to sell steel to Russia in exchange for Russia selling furs to the United States. The unintended consequence of this agreement was to undercut the American fur industry and virtually shut down the fur business in a matter of months. Since fur farms like this one were abruptly out of business, they had no other choice than to release the foxes back into the wild. Foxes that are normally bright orange like this red fox mated with the exotic foxes that were turned loose, and today we see a wide variety of red, gray, and silver mixtures in the foxes of Black Forest. The next part of our tour will take us west on Shoup Road. The cabin at 6670 Shoup Road was one of the houses of Mrs. Edith Wolford, the beloved teacher in Black Forest who bought this log house in 1943. It was built in the early 20s, and she called it one of the bargains of my lifetime. She bought the house and 20 acres of land for $5,000. In today's dollars, she paid about $60,000 for the house and 20 acres. That was truly a bargain. The Black Forest Service Center at 6580 Shoup Road is a respected business that provides automobile service and used car sales. This property has been a garage and service center since 1956. Glenn Truitt and Harold Fraser bought the property from Mrs. Wolford after the Korean War. The Table Rock Llama Fiber Art Studio at 6520 Shoup Road was built as a home in 1955, and the log cabin is currently used as a fiber art studio. Classes are offered in spinning, weaving, knitting, crocheting, felting, and natural dyes. The La Forêt Conference and Retreat Center at 6135 Shoup Road has a fascinating history. La Forêt means the forest in French. This is a private property, so please call ahead if you're interested in a tour. The camp is a popular place for family reunions, weddings, and wedding receptions, and hosts summer camps and retreats for children as well as adults. The caretaker's cottage is the building visible from the entrance on Shoup Road. La Forêt was originally the summer home of Mrs. Alice Bemis Taylor, a Colorado Springs philanthropist. She was known as the Orange Lady, who donated oranges to Black Forest school children who seldom saw fresh fruits in those days. Built in 1927, the camp and 500-acre property has several unique buildings. Ponderosa Lodge is a beautiful lodge of pine beams and stone fireplaces that commands a stunning view of Pikes Peak. The Bemis Taylor Chapel is a Southwest-style adobe chapel designed as a memorial to Mrs. Taylor's husband. Both buildings are listed on the National Historical Register. John Graw-Meem, a noted architect from Santa Fe, New Mexico, designed the chapel and also designed the Fine Arts Center in downtown Colorado Springs. In 1944, the Taylor Summer Home became La Forêt Camp, a church conference center administered by the United Church of Christ. The property originally encompassed almost the entire 2 sections of land bordered by Milam, Burgess, Black Forest, and Shoup Roads. Further west at 5380 Shoup Road is the location of the Talbert Cabin. Anna Jordan Talbert purchased it around 1915 and raised 2 sons. She supported them by mending and sewing for others. Winters were hard as they stuffed paper between the logs to keep out the cold. She left in 1947 and the old cabin has deteriorated over the years. A short distance to the north was another cabin which has been removed. This Black Forest summer cabin was owned by Frank and Annie Crump, who operated Pikes Peak Florist in Colorado Springs. Their granddaughter recalled pleasant memories of staying at the cabin every summer during the 1930s, even though it was very rustic, without electricity and just a step above camping. The forest didn't get electricity until the early 1940s, when the Rural Electrification Association was formed by the federal government to bring electricity to rural areas. The cost to homeowners was just $5 to bring electricity to your farm or forest home, and the REA workers encouraged whole families to help install poles and wire. Often it was the farm women who put in $5 of their egg and cream money for the electric service. The men may have worked from dawn to dusk, but the women were often working before sunrise and awake into the night, finishing their chores and housework. Continuing west on Shoup Road, we come to the Black Forest Regional Park. This parkland was donated to the Forest Service to be used as a forestry demonstration area in 1944 because of concerns about overcutting the timber and overgrazing of cattle. The goal of the Forest Service project was never realized, but in 1950 a community picnic area was proposed and initiated. Then in 1977, with encouragement from the Black Forest Athletic Association and the community, the regional park was developed with a soccer field, picnic shelters, tennis courts, and trails for hiking, cross-country skiing, and horseback riding. Today the park is a popular place for soccer games, picnics, outdoor weddings, and hiking. The next part of the tour will take us north on Black Forest Road to 12845 Black Forest Road. The very first store in Black Forest, other than people selling things out of their homes, was located in this building. Mrs. Phoebe Castile sold non-perishable items from this cabin near her home, built in 1916. When Mr. Cowan owned the property, he carefully dismantled the cabin, numbered the logs, and reassembled it a safer distance back from the road. Just north of this store is Brentwood Drive. Between Brentwood Drive and Swan Road, and east of Black Forest Road, was the Brentwood Country Club cabin sites. Brentwood Drive is still maintained by the residents as a private road to preserve the maximum amount of privacy and natural setting. Brentwood was one of two early subdivisions started in the Black Forest in the 1920s. This area was divided into small cabin sites that were only 50 feet by 100 feet. Today there are some homes in the Black Forest that are nearly 50 feet by 100 feet. The developers promised a golf course and other amenities. A number of summer cabins were built, but the stock market crash of 1929 stopped further development and only a few cabins remain. Today's building codes in the timbered area of Black Forest require 5 acres for each residence, so many of the small lots are now combined to provide more area to build the larger homes of today. At the southeast corner of Brentwood Drive is a large log home said to have been the site of a stage stop in the late 1800s. Legend has it that even earlier this same spot was an Indian trading post. This building is located along the banks of Kettle Creek, possibly named for the black kettle that hung from a tripod in front of the trading post. At the corner of Brentwood Drive and Ravine Drive, the remains of a pond are located in the clearing to the west. This pond was one of the attractions of the Brentwood Country Club. Horse-drawn carts shuttled people around Brentwood and down to the pond where people could picnic and ride paddle boats. Returning to Black Forest Road and proceeding north to 13710 Black Forest Road, we come to the Edith Wolford School. The first elementary school at this site was opened in 1952. An unused school building was moved here to educate Black Forest students. Mrs. Wolford was one of the teachers and part-time principal. As the enrollment grew, several additions were necessary. In the meantime, Mrs. Wolford became the full-time principal and was a pillar of the community. When she retired in 1969, it was fitting to put her name on her school. During the 2003-2004 school term, most of the old building was demolished and replaced with a new state-of-the-art structure. During that school year, classes were held in the Black Forest Lutheran Church and in portable buildings on the school site. The willingness of the Lutheran Church to open their doors to a school for an entire school year is a testimonial to the community spirit of Black Forest. On Black Forest Road, north of the school, we arrive at the crest of the Palmer Divide, the site of the original wrought iron entrance arch for the clubhouse of the Brentwood Country Club. The arch is now the driveway for a private residence. This elegant arch was to be the entry for a luxurious resort in the 1920s. The developers even seeded for a golf course in 1925. The promotional brochure made it sound like the place to be for the movers and shakers of the day. Plans for a ballroom and a variety of other entertainment facilities for adults and children came to a halt after the stock market crash of 1929. The foundation for the country club building is all that remains of the grandiose plans for this exclusive resort. Evidenced by the size of this foundation, the plans were ambitious. The basement of the clubhouse even included 2 lounges, each with its own fireplace. Looking to the northeast from the clubhouse, one can see the beautiful view from the top of the divide, which would also have overlooked the planned golf course. From this vantage point on top of the divide, the view to the north shows the vast expanses of grass and rolling hills. These grasslands were home to large ranches where thousands of cattle roamed and many acres of potatoes and wheat were grown. In the distance, just to the left of the tree in the center of this photograph, is the flat mesa top of Table Rock, a notable landmark for travelers in this area. Several trails passed below the mesa, and the town of Table Rock existed for several years. Below Table Rock is a small cemetery that dates back to 1877. About 24 people are buried in the Table Rock Cemetery, all local residents who ranched and farmed in the area. Many of the graves are children between the ages of 1 to 10, sad evidence of the harsh living conditions that existed in those early days. Now we'll return to our starting point at Black Forest Road and Shoup Road and travel to the east. At 7360 Shoup Road is a log home that was built in 1922 by Thomas and Allie Tebabaugh. The property was purchased from the Edgar Lumber and Box Company, which once owned over 12,000 acres of timber. As the Edgar Lumber and Box Company logged off parcels of land, they sold it to people who wanted to build homes. Mrs. Edith Wolford boarded here for a while after her husband's death in 1938. The small cabin to the right of the main house was built in 1924 and was used for extra sleeping quarters. This cabin even housed tuberculosis patients for a time and was not modernized until very recently. The Vern and Eleanor Hanisch family lived on this property from 1959 until 2003. The large cement block building in the back housed Vern's cabinet shop. Eleanor, affectionately known as Ellie, served as the Black Forest postmistress for 32 years. The large home to the east of the Tivaba cabins was part of the Tivaba property also. A large addition was added to a smaller log home in the past 10 years. Antone and Leona Hanisch, relatives of the Hanisch family next door, were one-time owners and lived there for many years. The log cabin at 7555 Shoup Road is known as the Cook Cabin. The original cabin was built before 1926. Ben Cook came here in 1926 from Kansas and bought this property. Doctors told Mr. Cook, who suffered from asthma, that he would not live many years unless he relocated to a higher altitude. 6 generations of his family have lived on this property. At 7680 Shoup Road, we find the Pease Cabin. This log home was built in 1923 by Paul Pease. His son, Paul Jr., worked at the Homer Loban sawmill at the intersection of Swan and Herring Roads. Notice the root cellar southeast of the cabin. We'll now work our way north on Herring Road. Herring Road was named for a family in the area who spelled their name with one R, but the spelling of the road somehow was confused in the naming. The Herring Homestead Cabin is no longer in existence. The first property on Herring Road north of Shoup is 12555 Herring Road. In this vacant space there was once a log home where Jim Perkins and his wife Louise lived and managed one of the many fox farms in the area. They sold the furs to the Ida Fur Company in Colorado Springs. The Waddells later purchased the property. Mr. Waddell worked at the Pinecone Ranch for many years. The home at 12725 Herring Road is known as the Wolford Home, even though the well-known teacher lived in several homes in the Black Forest. This cement block and pumice home was built in 1932. The 2-story home was quite impressive for the times, since most homes were small log cabins back then. Ira and Edith Wolford bought the home in 1933. Some of Mrs. Wolford's former students recall that she sometimes walked to the school a distance of over 2 miles. At the intersection of Herring Road and Swan Road, the property on the southwest corner was the location of the Homer Loban sawmill. Properties like this often still have the sawdust pit from the sawmill. The sawdust pits remain soft and spongy even today and will not support growth of anything but grasses. Swan Road was named for the owners of Swan Funeral Home in Colorado Springs, who owned the property along this road. This log home at 8150 Swan Road was completed in 1929. Bud and Alta Danford bought it in 1949 and later passed it on to their daughter and her husband. A cold storage plant operated in the cement block building in the late 1930s and early 1940s. Folks could have their meat and wild game processed and wrapped and then rent a locker to keep it frozen. Gas generators ran the refrigeration. Turkeys and chickens were raised here, 10,000 at a time. At this point, we're on the crest of the Palmer Divide as it winds its way to the east. Just southwest of the intersection of Vollmer Road and Swan Road is Vollmer Hill, the highest point on the Palmer Divide. This high point is located on a piece of private property containing a home and looks no different than any other knoll in the Black Forest. The distinction of Vollmer Hill is that at 7,704 feet above sea level, it is the highest point in the United States east of the Rocky Mountains. East of Vollmer Road, at Swan Road, we can see what remains of the Pinecone Ranch, now called the Pineries. This land was originally part of the KK Ranch, owned by the Kirk brothers. The ranch totaled 6,000 acres at its peak, and has been sold and divided several times through the years. The original KK holdings have now become Pinecone Acres, Wildwood, Pine Glen, and Pinehurst Wood subdivisions. The center part of the ranch became Black Forest Reserve in the 1990s, and the northern third has been set aside in a conservation easement under the management of the Audubon Society as a refuge for birds. In 2007, the southern third of the ranch was sold to create the Sanctuary in the Pines subdivision. Very few large ranches remain in the forest. One of the more notable ones is the SHAMROCK Ranch along Highway 83 at Northgate Road. The SHAMROCK Ranch consists of 2,600 acres and raises cattle and horses. An entire section of land on the ranch, 640 acres, has been set aside as a conservation easement to be preserved in its natural state. The Clark Ranch on Meridian Road is still operating. Other ranches that are no longer in existence include the 8,000-acre R.E. Johnson Ranch, which was on the southwest corner of the Black Forest and extended well into the present-day Briargate area. The Samuel Stout Ranch at the corner of Highway 83 and Northgate Road extended westward into what is now the Air Force Academy. Other big ranches included the Shadelands Ranch, Bar X Ranch, J.J. Pettigrew Ranch, and Peterson Ranch. The Ayer Ranch at Meridian Road is still owned by the fifth generation of the Ayer family, and part of the old foundation from the barn at the Grandview Ranch is still visible in the Woodlake subdivision. Some of the old buildings remain from other ranches as well. The J.G. Evans Barn at the dip of Hodgen Road, east of Black Forest Road, is listed on the National Historic Register, and the ranch on the south side of the road is called Hodgen in the Dip. Further south on the west side of Vollmer Road, just past Shroop Road, we come to Section 16. This section of land was given to the state of Colorado in the 1800s. The government set aside sections like this all over the United States to be used for schools. This square mile of state land contains a school and the partnership trails. The Colorado Forest Service maintains the health of the forest, and a horseback riding and hiking trail winds around the entire section. The School in the Woods is a District 20 environmentally based education program available to 4th grade students who spend a year in an outdoor learning environment. Just west of the Burgess Road and Vollmer Road intersection is the parking lot and trailhead for the partnership trails. The Black Forest Trails Association was instrumental in developing and building the trails around this section. The trail takes approximately an hour and a half to complete the 4-mile trail, so come on over and take a walk in a beautiful forested area. Just east of Vollmer Road is the Hardin Ranch at 8888 Hardin Road. The former name was the Vollmer Ranch, which covered a much larger area. Merle and Barbara Hardin moved here in 1946 and raised Hereford cattle. The large barn was built with logs and lumber from trees cut on the ranch. In 1972, part of the ranch was developed into High Acres subdivision, and the streets were named for ranch-related themes. Hereford Way is obvious. Lazy H was part of the ranch brand, and Domino is a famous cattle bloodline. The ranch contains a nicely maintained 2-room cabin on the property that was built around 1900 and used on a logging site east of the ranch before being moved to the current site when the Vollmer family started a dairy operation. Hardin Road was named for this family, and Vollmer Road was named for the previous owner of the ranch. On the northeast corner of Vollmer Road and Burgess Road is an old cement foundation from a billiard hall that existed in the early days but only lasted about a year. On the southeast corner is a farm and ranch established by Mr. Sam Bowling in the 1920s. He worked for the railroad and commuted to Colorado Springs every day for many years. Back in those days, cars were slower and the roads were rough and narrow, and the city was about 25 miles away, so that was a major commute. The land where he raised oat hay is now covered with Ponderosa pines. His property was named Bowling Green and has a very attractive home surrounded by a whiteboard fence. The property is currently being developed into the Forest Gate subdivision. The town of Eastonville was originally located at the bottom of this hill near Eastonville Road and Sweet Road. The town is completely gone now, but has been replaced by modern homes and ranches. The Colorado and Southern Railroad built a rail line that passed along the eastern edge of the Black Forest, and Eastonville was one of the main stops to pick up potatoes, cattle, wheat, and timber. At one point, 9 passenger trains passed through the town each day, as well as numerous freight trains. Around 1910, the town boasted 400 residents, with 2 hotels, a newspaper, 2 large mercantile stores, and numerous homes. The town had a brass band, several churches, several civic and fraternal organizations, and touted itself as the potato capital of the world. As the timber was logged off and competition took the rail business to the rail lines along the Front Range, the town declined. A severe potato blight in the 1920s almost completely ended potato farming. A huge rainstorm in 1935 caused flooding that washed out a large stretch of the railroad bed, and the company decided not to rebuild it, so the town was doomed. Houses and stores were dismantled or moved, and today all that remains are a number of cement foundations. An old rail car sits on a small segment of rail that still exists at the site. One can only imagine what stories this building might tell if it had a voice. The Eastonville Cemetery was originally called the Shadelands Cemetery, named after the Shadelands Ranch. The cemetery dates back well into the 1800s and contains graves of Civil War veterans and many early settlers. Some of the headstones bear the ominous date of 1918, when the great flu epidemic swept the country and claimed the lives of thousands of people, many of them young children. The Cherokee Trail crossed the Black Forest from north to south on the eastern edge of the forest. This double set of trail ruts appear north of Woodman Road, just west of Meridian Road. Even though the trail ruts were cut deeply from wagons and erosion, 130 years of weather and time have almost erased the trail, and residential and commercial development is hastening that process. At the same location on Woodman Road, these trail ruts are visible coming up from the south. The Cherokee Trail connected the Santa Fe Trail at Bent's Fort near La Junta to the California-Oregon Trail to the north. In the 1850s, heavy traffic of explorers, military convoys, gold seekers, and settlers made the trail a two-lane road in many places that was often clogged with traffic. The trail was abandoned in the 1870s with the arrival of the railroad. Viewed from on top of Point of Rocks overlooking Kiowa Creek near the Douglas County line, the arrows show the trail faintly crossing from left to right in the center of the picture. Another of the early trails in the area was the Jimmy Camp Trail that also skirted the east edge of the Black Forest and was an important trail supplying trading posts and forts along the Platte and Arkansas rivers. In some places, the Cherokee Trail followed the same route as the earlier Jimmy Camp Trail. Army convoys traveled this trail, often taking supplies to forts in Wyoming and westward. One such convoy was traveling north with a large number of horses and cattle on April 30th, 1858, and decided to camp in the trees on the eastern edge of the Black Forest. The April day dawned warm and clear. The new grass was about 6 inches high and the trees had sprouted their spring leaves. By evening, the wind changed and it began to snow very hard. The ensuing snowstorm lasted 2.5 days. Several hundred horses bolted and ran away into the storm, followed by men who tried to catch them. Several of the men and many horses were lost in the storm. The leader of the convoy, Captain Randolph Marcy, later wrote a book about travel in the West and advised travelers to hasten past this spot as rapidly as possible during winter and spring months. At 7680 Burgess Road is the log home of Margaret and Howard Carver and family, built in 1924. The two-room cabin to the west of the main house probably was used for sleeping quarters. The Carver family moved here in 1946. They bought 80 acres of land and opened a chicken and turkey farm. Later, their son Fred operated a garage and salvage yard on the site. The main log home burned in 1997. Howard Carver subdivided this property and named two roads, Carver Lane and Lexi Lane, for their daughters. The southwest corner of the Black Forest Road and Burgess Road intersection was known as Glover's Corner for many years. A store called Brown's Grocery had been erected on the site around 1955, selling groceries, animal feed, and gasoline. In the early 1960s, Fred and Thelma Glover bought the store and renamed it Glover's Corner. That store closed in 1987 and was demolished in 2003. The last use of the building was for a knick-knack shop called Kim's Cabin. The building on the right has been a bank, a liquor store, and was even used as an Assembly of God church for a time. One of the nearby neighbors said the previous owners of the building would turn over in their grave if they knew their building had been used as a liquor store. South of Glover's Corner is the Black Forest Lumber, which began as the Albert Howey Sawmill, a sawmill that specialized in peeled logs. In 1960, Gilbert and Janet Harris opened a paint store and the first Black Forest post office in two small buildings to the north of the store. In 1962, the center part was added and lumber sheds were built as the property became Everett Harris Lumber. In the next few years, the left side was added, housing the post office and some shops. A real estate office and other businesses have also been located here. In 1966, Everett sold the business, and Gilbert Harris and a silent partner formed Black Forest Lumber. Today, Black Forest Lumber continues to sell lumber and hardware under a new owner. Continuing south on Black Forest Road, we come to the Indian doctor's place just before we drive out of the forest. Dr. Yosemite Nabona arrived in the Black Forest around 1928. He began with a tent and cabin and later replaced them with a main house with separate rooms where he could see patients. A small hospital, nurses' quarters, and a treatment center were built. The center was called the Navajo Indian Remedies Company. A laboratory produced herbal medicines that supposedly cured afflictions from tuberculosis to hernias. Many of the buildings remain today and have been used as rental properties. Cement totem poles were built along the road, although it is not known if they are original. In 1934, Dr. Nabona was asked to leave when it was determined he was practicing medicine without a license. In the 1930s, the property was used for a civilian conservation corps camp, housing young men who helped people in Black Forest with building projects and other tasks. The glider port was located about a mile south of Baker Road and a mile east of Black Forest Road, to the east of the Highlands Park subdivision. The glider port was started in 1962 when a north-south runway was built. A hangar, clubhouse, dormitories, and flight school were added. Through the years, glider flights flew as high as 35,000 feet, and because of the excellent soaring conditions, pilots from all over the world came for this flying experience, and the facility became world-renowned. The rapidly expanding demand for residential developments resulted in the sale of the glider port in the 1990s, and the area is now dotted with homes. In this picture, the glider port was located at the site of the furthest cluster of homes in the distance. On the west side of Black Forest Road at Cowpoke Road is the Kit Carson Riding Club. The club was formed in 1942 following a horseback ride to Fort Carson Army Post. Club members organized a drill team that performed at the rodeo at Penrose Stadium the first year it was built. The club incorporated in 1947 and built its first arena on North Academy Boulevard in 1957. They relocated in 1973 to this 15-acre site. Many a rodeo champ has begun his career in this arena. On the east side of Black Forest Road, across from the Kit Carson Riding Club, is a noise abatement wall for the Woodman Heights. Just east of that wall was the site of the Forest View School. The one-room frame school was originally built just to the east on Balmer Road in 1888. It was named the Bleecker School after the first teacher. Around 1915, the school was moved to this location and renamed the Forest View School. The school closed in 1945 and the building was moved, leaving only part of the cement foundation. The foundation was removed in 2006 when home building began at Woodman Heights. A granite marker has been placed in the wall to commemorate the school. We've almost completed our historical tour around the Black Forest. Before we finish, we would like to show you pictures of several log homes in the Black Forest, some occupied and some abandoned. These homes represent the hopes and dreams of people who lived here long ago, desiring to make a comfortable living for themselves and their families. Their determination to endure the long snowy winters and the isolation of living 20 miles from the city is a testimonial to strong constitutions and iron wills. Your tour has taken you east, west, north, and finally south to highlight the culture, beauty, and history of this area. Driving north on Black Forest Road back into the trees, you can see how the Palmer Divide rises as you drive north and where the Ponderosa pines begin. If you wish to learn more about Black Forest history, the local library has a number of books available. You can also contact the Black Forest History Committee for more information. You will find the History Committee as part of the Community Club. Contact information can be found there. The booklet included with this DVD contains the script for this tour and a map showing the location of each of the sites described in the booklet. With that in hand, you can go on a real tour of your own and see these places in real life. We hope this will increase your interest in the history of the Black Forest. As we bid farewell, we would like to thank you for coming along on this tour of our beloved Black Forest. We who live here value this area as a jewel that must be protected, both in its natural rural beauty and also in its way of life. We would like to thank the members of the Friends of the Black Forest Log School, who spent many hours researching and compiling this history. Our thanks also go to Judy von Ollefeld, editor of the Black Forest News and author of Thunder, Sun, and Snow, an authoritative history of the Black Forest. The Black Forest History Committee also helped produce this DVD presentation for you. We hope you enjoyed it.